It is a beautiful morning, and our keen PhD student sets out confident that she is contributing to making the world a better place. She has been invited to speak at a large scientific conference, and her nervousness and excitement are having an epic battle in her brain. She arrives, idling and looking around. A nervous smile on her lips, but not in her eyes. A fellow conference attendee moves towards her.
Hi there. How are you? How are you doing?
Hi, great,
nice
thanks.
to meet you.
How are you? Nice
I'm
to
good,
meet you
I'm
too.
good. Are you excited or?
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah.
It's the first time I'm presenting my research at this such a large international conference.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's your research background?
My background, right? It's a bit complicated. See, I did my undergrad degree in marine biology,
Right.
and my master's degree in international environmental law, and now I'm working in like, you know, kind of a sustainability it's a really international program, a lot of disciplines. Basically it's an interdisciplinary PhD program, and I'm looking at cultural ecosystem services and how they help alleviate poverty.
Oh, right. So you're a marine biologist then, and you're studying the culture of fish and seaweed in West Africa, is that correct? Or?
No, you see, I've kind of moved on from the marine biology.
Right.
So what's your background?
Well, I'm a molecular biologist, and I'm trying to cure cancer with nanotechnology, which is tailored to the genetic makeup of individuals.
Wow, okay, that's quite impressive.
Thanks.
I mean, I too hope to contribute to the world in a positive way. And I mean, we really think that our research is really important for the future of the planet. And you know, by trying to understand how poverty is, you know, how it's maintained in these places where there's degrading ecosystems is really, really important for the future of the planet. So what I'm doing is trying to understand like the reorganization phase of the adaptive cycle, because that's a really important time. And if we don't understand that, then I mean, we really don't know what the future of our biosphere looks like.
Well, right, okay. To be honest, I really didn't understand what you just said. I mean, I understand all the words, but when you put them together, it doesn't really make sense. I mean, that's what I really like about my research. It's very clear how I'm actually making the world a better place. And it must be hard for you, you know, you're not really doing like real science. I mean, what do you, I mean, how do you want to really contribute to making the world a better place?
Well, yeah, so like, I guess ecosystems are the basis of our life. And if we don't understand how ecosystems and societies work together and what their interactions and what the feedbacks between them are, then we really can't understand what our future looks like. So it's really, I mean, it's just really important. We're trying to say
all right, look,
yeah.
okay, I'm sorry, but I have to go. Professor Stark has just come in the room.
Okay.
He was someone who did some of the foundational research on using nanotechnology to cure cancer, and I really don't want to miss him. So good luck with those ecosystem services things, and I'll maybe see you later.
Yeah, great.
This infuriating conversation, our PhD student spent some time in a corner, drinking bitter coffee, agonizing over how she needed to make her research more globally applicable. As she struggled, her idol, the superstar Professor Bassi Volkström, approached. He said he had read one of her papers and offered her to be on a forthcoming paper as a co-author. She stood in stunned silence, tilting her head to the side like a curious puppy. After a while, when she could move again, a conversation began inside her head.
So this conference, it's really making me realize that my research needs to be globally applicable. I really need to be solving real world problems. And this opportunity, I just, about this paper, it's just such a great opportunity for my PhD, I think, to be a part of this.
Well, or should you maybe not be making that a priority right now? I mean, your last paper was rejected twice because of, your lack of understanding of multivariate statistics. So maybe you should be trying to deepen your knowledge of those methods before, you start thinking about all these big picture collaborations.
Yeah, but this is just such a good opportunity, and it feels like I can't give it up right now. And I mean, I know statistics are important, and my science needs to be robust, or else no one's going to listen to it anyways.
But your PhD is supposed to be a time where you gain specialized knowledge in one field, and then afterwards you can do all the big picture collaborating you want.
But we're always being told to look at the big picture, to be transdisciplinary. And then on the other hand, our papers get rejected because we're not doing good enough science. And economists saying we're not using economic equations and theory properly and we have the wrong assumptions. I mean, I just don't understand. It's a really hard balance to be at the one time, doing globally applicable real world science, and then on the other hand, really gaining the skills that I need as a PhD student.
Our PhD student is frustrated and unsure of herself. She wishes she could go back in time and change how she dealt with the first situation and change also her inner dialogue. But wait, she can. Audience, we call on you. How can we together work towards addressing the dilemmas of being transdisciplinary students of sustainability science in 2014?
All right, then we go back to the first scene. We start all over again, and the task is very simple. There is a conversation here. Whenever you feel it's stuck in any way, so say stop, and you're welcome up and swap with the person and answer.
Help me, please.
I'm really very nice.
Please, if you okay, and if you don't shout stop, I will do that and try to get up someone on stage. Or, yeah, this is it for the first part. For the second part, when it's around her head, then you can just say stop and shout in the voice you feel like should come in her head. All right? Good, then we start all over again.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, yeah, good, thanks.
Great,
Yeah, good.
great. So what are you doing here? You're excited?
Yeah, really excited. It's the first time I'm presenting at a large international conference.
Cool, so what's your research background?
Yeah, so it's a bit complicated, actually. You see, I have an undergraduate degree in marine biology, a master's degree in international environmental law.
Stop! Is there anyone who feels like helping out here?
Is there a better way to answer this question?
What did you say? Louder.
You're oversharing.
Oversharing, okay.
Calm down in your story.
Okay.
What should she say instead?
I'm doing research that will help us understand complex interactions between the ecosystem and social systems, and I hope to show how we can live more sustainably.
I really hope I can repeat that.
You better.
Okay. Can you just repeat, Andrew?
So what's your research background then?
Well, I'm working on understanding the complex interactions between social and ecological systems so that we can all live more harmoniously on this planet. Sorry,
Go on.
That's really great, but you kind of dodged my question. I mean, I want to know about your
Well, actually, I think I have a very strong research backing me if I'm doing it right. I'll state it as, if someone has suggestions, please help. Yeah, so
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
Can you repeat, Andrew, just before?
You just completely dodged the question.
hey, I'm a scientist.
on, go on.
Scientists of what? Like concepts or?
Yeah, actually a scientist of multiple things.
Help! Someone help here.
Does my background matter? Marine biology and law? Is that an asset? Is that complicated? Do people want to hear about that?
What's your research question?
Should I say that?
Yes. Yeah, tell me about your research.
It's fictional. I'm trying to understand cultural ecosystem services and how it contributes to poverty alleviation in West Africa.
All right. You heard that?
Is that interesting?
That's really interesting. Absolutely. Do you want to intervene there?
Yeah, cultural ecosystem services is your thing. He doesn't know what it is, so probably should be like the cultural benefits of interactions with environment or something that it's not jargon.
So, right.
So, okay, so what's your background? What are you researching?
Yes, I'm researching the complex interactions between social and ecological systems. Specifically, I'm looking at the way that the benefits from ecosystem services that they give to culture. Someone else should do it.
Very good, very good.
Oh, you mean cultural ecosystem services?
Okay.
Okay, go on.
Are you happy with my background?
Yeah.
All right, we can move on.
Yes, move on.
So, okay, so tell me more about how do you want to contribute with your research to kind of making the world a better place? You've kind of started to answer it, but I'd love some more elaboration.
Yeah, so as I said before, we really don't have a great understanding about social and ecological interactions, and there's a growing number of researchers working on this. And the reason that this really matters is that we believe
you need to avoid the jargon and get on to your specifics.
What should she say?
Tell them about the community that you work in and the people and the problems they're facing and how you're helping solve those problems.
Okay.
Get to the meat. So tell me more about how your research contributes to making the world a better place. What's your story, Jamil?
So let me tell you about the case study that I'm working on in the Sahel. So in the Sahel, there has been a lot of drought recently, and people are struggling with how to respond to that drought. And in order to understand how they've responded, if we can understand how they've responded in the past, we can also maybe help support them in the diversity of responses for the future.
Right. We move on to the...
Part two.
Yeah. All right.
This conference has really made me realize that my research needs to be, at the one hand, globally applicable. I need to really get at real-world problems that people like molecular biologists can understand. But at the same time, I need to be sure that the science that I'm doing is rigorous. I need to, I think that this is a great opportunity to be a part of this paper.
But your methods,
Right.
there's some issues. How are we going to solve the issues? Because we can't keep working on these big picture collaborations without having a specified knowledge that we can fall back on.
But this is just such a good opportunity. As a PhD student, should I be giving opportunities like this up to go sit in a library to learn methods?
Suggestions for the inner voice, please. We have time, we can wait.
If you don't have methods to contribute, you might not be able to collaborate the way that you want to.
Okay. Is that for her?
Yeah, well, that's her.
The inner voice?
Sure,
Yeah. All right. Can you just...
You need to bring something to the table.
Exactly. Okay. So, in future, people might not even ask you to collaborate on anything because you have nothing to contribute.
All right. Yeah, please.
Yes, for Camila.
Please.
You can say that for many years people have been doing this, getting very specific knowledge about things, and things are just not getting better. So maybe our approach should change too. And no one said it was easy, but innovating is not easy, but we have to try to do things differently.
All right.
Should I try a response? And then there's...
Yeah, well, shall we listen to you too?
I think the big picture is not about the methods, it's about the ideas and about values. So methods are surely important, but sharing ideas and so on is more than that. So I wouldn't restrict it. I wouldn't restrict your work to that.
All right, there one, too.
So I agree, but I think that it's really important for you to feel that you actually really understand.
Say the words to her, not what she should, but say the actual
Yeah, so kind of like
narrative.
Well, I guess it's very important for me to understand indeed one system, and again, in coming back to the first comment, to sort of be able to actually contribute not only with methods, but with knowledge from what I've learned to the bigger picture. And I do think that you can actually do a little bit the good things in parallel. Maybe you can prioritize differently in different times. Kind of now, during the 6 months, I focus more on this global thing, and not the other 6 months. I focus more on the bigger thing. They are not complementary.
Great. 2 hands there, so please. One of you.
You should ask. You should ask Professor.
Louder. And you're always here. One touch. You should say.
What skills he would like you to have in order to contribute most effectively to his paper, and whether there's not a space for you to focus on learning those and then contribute later.
Right. Next one.
Another thing is you need both kinds of people that specialize very much in one topic and people that connect the dots in different topics. And there are many people that specialize but few that connect. So why not be one of the people that connect?
Okay. Cool.
Should I take the scene once?
Yeah.
With those suggestions?
Yes, do that, please.
So I really feel this conference has really made me internalize this dilemma, because on the one hand, I'm feeling that we need more connectors. But on the other hand, I'm feeling there's more and more connectors. So many of my colleagues and so many other graduate students are connectors. Is there space for so many connectors? But in terms of whether or not I should write this paper now or focus on more methods, it's always more exciting to be involved in a high-level research project. So it's really hard to have the discipline to sit down and learn those methods. But I do think it's a really good idea if I can ask Professor Folkstrom what skills he needs for that paper, and if I have them or not. And if I don't, then maybe I can ask him also for the support during that time while I learn those skills. And maybe I can collaborate with him later on. Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now if we'd please like to invite our distinguished panelists to the panel. David and Francis, yes please. Tracy and Jörn. And we decided to ask our 4 panelists to please help contribute to especially this internal dilemma that the PhD student was facing during this scene, because each of their quite unique backgrounds in thinking about these issues. And I'd first like to ask David Tavara, if you could please tell us about your personal survival kit for those working towards knowledge integration.
Well, first of all, thank you for having invited me. I think I must have done something wrong in my life to be here. But maybe not. I actually just, about 20 years ago, we started putting computer models in focus groups with lay people, and that led to the first book on sustainability, public participation in sustainability science. When I presented those results, people were saying that what we were doing was methodologically incorrect. So, my last paper is on theater and sustainability. Okay, so basically, I would say in this conference that what you need to, my first advice, or piece of advice for this survival kit is try to be resilient. Right? That's the only thing. What I mean by that? What I mean that basically, try not to, a friend of mine some time ago told me that if you dig a hole, you might not be able to get out, too deep. So I think that's the problem. So try to get to know everything you need to know, but not more, and then move to the next thing. Because, and you can see a lot of people with a lot of experience get stuck in one hole that they actually dig, but they cannot get out. So actually, it's easy to create your own grave. I couldn't be reflected more with your play. I loved it. I really loved it because actually I was seeing myself there, sitting there with all the questions. There is only one thing, perhaps. I don't want to take too much room to the other speakers, but what can we do? The problem is what can we do as researchers? For me, as sustainability researchers, first, I would say I wouldn't think of sustainability as a field. You can take it more as an ideal, a practical ideal, something that you may want to achieve and then get some practical consequences. And also try to take it as a kind of cultural transformation. I think that the type of work I try to do, basically through dialogue and knowledge integration, I try to bring people into a different cognitive and moral space, which is more extended in time, looking for future generations, is global, thinking about global. My last work is in global system science with Montpellier and others. And also try to bring the non-human world in it. I think people tend to confuse anthropocentrism with humanism, and they are completely different things. I think by extending our cognitive and moral perception and cultural references and bringing into our thinking the non-human world, we actually can expand, allow people to reflect our sustainability. That's what I want to say at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, so the next question we would like to direct to Francis. And yeah, due to your considerable experience in interdisciplinary collaborations, as well as having led and even designed novel curricula at your university, we are interested whether you foresee in the near future any favorable changes in the institutional structures of universities and research in general that make it easier for interdisciplinary researchers to build a career.
I wish I could say yes to that. I think it's possible that the university system will collapse, but it's going to be a collapse. It's not going to be, waking up and seeing the light. I think that the problem right now is that in order to get academic jobs, the vast majority have to squeeze yourself into a disciplinary slot, which means you do have to have that background training. There are a few institutes, largely think tanks or institutes within universities, where they search for specifically interdisciplinary training, but there's still few and far between. And so then the best hope really is collapse, and that may or may not happen, and it may or may not happen in your time while you're looking for a job, right? So yeah, I was really interested in your data, because to me, the way I interpret that data is the fact that, right now, the increased emphasis on social science or natural sciences because you're all looking for jobs. And in fact, that is the strategy. You almost have to put that forward. Whereas the people who had their PhDs before 1990, which includes myself, you have the luxury now of being able to describe yourself any way you want because you've had a history of that. So, in terms of your play, which I loved, it was really terrific. I would just say, one thing, which is I've changed disciplines multiple times. So, I started out in humanities, went into social scientists, then went into a business school, applied science, teaching strategy, and now mostly work with scientists, so I've changed many times. And, what's the survival kit, your question? Is something which I guess I would call epistemological agility. So it really is good to get a truly good founding in at least one methodology and in epistemology, basically understanding where thinking comes from. So within science and social science, you have these multiple paradigms of what is truth, what is data, what is the role of the researcher. They're different from each other. But if you're trained to recognize that, it's like cracking codes. It means you know how to interface with whatever group you're looking at. And even if the content that they're focused on is quite different from your own, if you understand the epistemology they're coming from, then you can find a way to translate what you're doing into what they're doing. So I would say increasingly, even in these highly interdisciplinary contexts, we ought to be training graduate students in really good courses in research design, epistemology, just so that they have that capacity to crack codes, because then they can move much more easily back and forth. And the thing about a methodology, whichever one it is, obviously some people are really gifted in multiple ones, but there almost isn't any research form that doesn't rely on that. And if you're well trained in that, it also is an avenue in to interesting work that you can then build on.
Thank you. Thank you. So, continuing on the thought of jobs, getting jobs. Jörn, we have heard that you are starting a new interdisciplinary research program and are in the process of recruiting new PhD students, postdocs. So we wanted to ask, what are the skills and competences you are looking for in that recruitment process?
Thank you. So I'm definitely looking for people that have skills in something. So I need to be able to see that they are good at something. So my main recommendation to people would be to kind of not think so much about disciplines perhaps, but think about 2 or 3 things that you are good at and make those your profile, make those your strengths. So those could be an analytical technique, or they could be the fact that you write brilliant conceptual papers. Whatever it is, you've got to have something that is unique to you. And I think the biggest risk that I see in people who go very interdisciplinary in their PhDs is that they end up being conceptually very broad, but sort of get a bit stuck in what I'd call conceptual la-la land. So they kind of know a little bit about everything, but they're not actually any good at anything. And that is a real problem. That doesn't mean you have to be good at a particular discipline, but you've got to be good at something. So I would say for the quantitatively inclined, get good at some quantitative method. Doesn't matter if it's preferably one that you can use to different kinds of purposes. So say some network analysis type things, some statistics type things, some GIS type things. So things that are transportable that you can use in many different sort of instances. But I'd make sure that you get good at something. Yeah, that's probably the single most important thing, I'd say, to sort of have a couple of strengths that you recognize and build on those.
Okay, now we have one question for Tracy. Because we know that you also have an interdisciplinary PhD degree yourself. So regarding all these opportunities and challenges that we face as interdisciplinary students and young researchers, what are, in your view, the competences we should develop? These kind of steps have been what we were saying, but how can we then market them better?
Yes, the good old marketing. So one of the opportunities, if you're like me, when you read a job ad, because I'm always on the job market, we actually usually always are. I always have to keep one eye open. But so when you look at a job ad, the great thing is there are a lot of jobs out for interdisciplinary research. The issue with it is the more general the job ad is written, the more applicants. So my husband applied for a job where 1,000 people applied for a job. It was a very open call, and there were 2 positions, 1,000 people. In the United States, the jobs that I apply for, at least 100, 150 people are applying for. So you have to be like 1 of 10, right, just to even get in. So one of the challenges and opportunities is to decode, as you said, the job ad, because sometimes who's ever writing the job ad or the department don't even really know what they want. But it's an opportunity, because one job that I applied for was on environmental geography, Well, I thought it meant interdisciplinary, human and environment. My colleague thought that it meant just environmental. I called them up, and it was human environment, and I got an interview. So use that as an opportunity to call them, call him, and decode. And then you have this little, the strength of the weak ties. You have a connection in. They heard about you, okay? So the second thing is you really want to show them what you have done. When you were talking about your example just in your research, when you were talking about your research, you actually didn't give an example. And I think one of the comments in the audience was, speak in examples when you're writing your application for jobs. Because the fact is, in the interdisciplinary world, nobody really knows what everybody's talking about, and examples are ways of clarifying, okay? And the last, of course, I'm a methods person, so one of the issues just here in the conference is how to operationalize resilience. We've been talking about this for like 10, 15, 20 years, I don't know, a lot. Show me your method, show me what you can bring, and it doesn't matter what discipline your method is because they belong to everybody, so that's an avenue in for interdisciplinary collaboration. And also look at every single job opportunity, interview, letter that you write, every discussion as an opportunity to sort of redefine yourself and just clarify to everybody what you're actually doing.
So thank you all for your diverse insights on our questions. And we'd now like to open the floor for a few questions before we have a creative wrap-up. So if anyone has questions to our panelists, then please.
The first thing that popped to my mind.
Yeah, one up here and then in the back.
The first thing that popped to my mind is, okay, so I run a master's program, I run a PhD program, and I do undergraduate course. What methods exactly, if I'm going to like only have them for, say, for the master's, I'll have them for almost a year. Which method should I choose then? Because I can't do them all. If I'm going to do a program, for example, so
I mean, I would say
the methods and mention specifics.
Did everyone hear the question?
Sorry. Sorry, so I... No?
Yeah.
Let me just repeat it.
I can try to repeat it, which I've now forgotten. Tracy, you were about to answer.
Now, no?
Just repeat the question, Jamila.
Okay, so the question was that as someone who's running master's programs and PhD students, what methods specifically?
Give me a toolbox.
She wants a toolbox.
I could just say that, you know, it's the old-fashioned research design courses, you know, have gone out of favor. But honestly, the answer to that question is dependent on the particular theoretical approach and the subject matter. What is great, you know, in a year in a master's course is that you introduce that as the fact that there are multiple methods, and methods are suited to certain kinds of questions, and they're suited to certain kinds of theoretical or epistemological approaches. Then, you know, a student should be exposed to a number of them because people rarely like them all. And so they're going to definitely gravitate towards one side or another. They should have enough time to really specialize in that later on.
Can I maybe say one thing on that as well? And that is that I think it's very different depending on whether you're talking about PhD students or postdocs. So PhD students that start with me, I'm not really too worried if they know much at all, really. Like, I mean, depending on what the research is, they're going to have to pick up new skills as they go anyway. I think it's, so you want to have some sort of awareness, and mostly I want them to be able to think and write, because those are the two things that is really annoying if you sort of have problems there. But specific methods, though, I think you can still pick up specific to your project then. But for a postdoc, it's a bit different. For a postdoc, I expect a postdoc to help me in, say, also co-supervising students and so on. For a postdoc, I need them to already have skills. I don't want to sit down and sort of teach them how to do sort of a basic statistical test or something.
There's a question.
Can I just quickly? I would just also ask what kind of knowledge you want to get, because it's very much depending on the type of knowledge. So different types of knowledge require different types of methods. And I would see the main method, in my view, is a good conversation. So I think the students, in my view, need to learn to listen and ask the right questions and process that, because I believe in epistemological democracy. So it's not just one, something that takes me quite a long time to describe.
I think just one comment. Is that on still? Yeah, okay. One comment for the methods. Is it on? Hello?
Yeah, something just happened.
One comment for the methods is maybe it's not a specific software, but you need to learn, walk away with a troubleshooting skill. You need to be able to struggle with academic software that doesn't give you the answers, and you can Google it and figure it out on your own. That's what you need to walk away with. Because the fact is, there's not one software that solves any problem, and you always have to be sort of, you just need that, you need something messy to work with, to hit your head against the wall a little bit.
Thank you. So epistemological flexibility, epistemological democracy. I think Bert, you had a question in the back.
Yes, maybe I should stand. Bert de Vries, Utrecht University. I'm giving a course on sustainability science, which is slightly different from what might be called resilience science. And I focused basically on two elements, which is system science, or maybe complex system science, in order to make sure that master students have at least some familiarity with the key methodologies which are used in science. And the other part, which I learned from my work in the IPCC, is actually that if we construct models, then narratives are an important additional element. In particularly, I think is the second element, to engage students, because after all, sustainability, maybe resilience is different, but sustainability is up to a point a normative element. It is in a way about a decent quality of life. It has a normative component. So to get students engaged based on their values and reflect on their values is, I think, very important to keep actually the kind of motivation which you were struggling with. Now my question is, and I recently published this in the book Sustainability Science, because that's my question about, do we think that we as teachers have also a responsibility to offer a substance, to offer a coherent amount of knowledge, which we think is what PhD students, but also MSc students, should have once they start to study, let's say, sustainability or the quest for sustainable futures. And I would like to know your answers to this question.
1 minute. Of course, I loved your book and I review it, and it's but as I mentioned, I think we should perhaps talk about, yes, the answer is yes, we need that core knowledge, definitely, otherwise we cannot move on, and that's for sure. But on the other hand, I would think that, as I see it, we need to look and talk about sustainabilities and complexities. And to look at always in plural, because when we're dealing with needs in particular context, we cannot define sustainability in our own terms. We need to do kind of more bottom-up, engage the people in the definition, and do that in a very open knowledge systems way. We can create networks of knowledge around those needs. So the knowledge we can create, of course, science can bring, but also we need to provide that more nuanced interpretation, multiple interpretations of both complexities and sustainabilities.
A quick comment. So I went through an interdisciplinary PhD program, and I would sit sometimes in a class, or we were working on a paper about actually how to operationalize resilience. And I would hear the professors that I had full courses with each of them talking to each other like this, because I actually took the whole course from them, and I really felt like I understood what they were saying, but I could see they didn't understand themselves. So I think I actually view the students as a huge opportunity for faculty members to become more interdisciplinary, and you might actually not know what they need. They might know more of what they need, because they might understand what what all the faculty members do more than the faculty members understand what each other do. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So my feeling about that again is that complexity approaches, as I favor them now myself, and I think that they're a coherent theoretical approach and a particular epistemology, but not everybody shares it. So it should be introduced as one way of seeing the world, one way that seems to have a really good fit with the kinds of problems, these very complex social ecological problems. But for example, in the original skit, you find somebody working on nanotechnology and cancer. One of the key disconnects is the approach is going to be very, very different. And so, one of the nice things about complexity theory is it can sometimes make you feel slightly superior to the much more rational, driven scientists who are using very different kinds of theories. And you can suggest to them that perhaps if they adopted a complexity lens on their problem, they might see something different. And it's happening all the time now, and you see people like Martin Gavre's working now with neurologists and psychologists, and he's offering a different lens on old problems for them. So I think we still need to be aware that we're using a particular kind of approach, and what are its tenets of what data is, what truth is, what the observer is, the role of the researcher, and that when we encounter other scientific and social scientific disciplines, they often talk by each other because they're approaching it from quite a different perspective. And depending on the perspective, the same words come to mean very different things. So when I said epistemological agility, I think it's great to be able to sit in the room and say, oh, look, he's approaching it from this perspective, he's approaching this perspective. It's just why they seem to be talking right by each other. And you do see that all the time. You get much more comfortable with that once you start to decode it in that way. And you can decide where you want to situate yourself. And you come to see the weaknesses in other perspectives, your own as well. And it makes you feel much more assured about interacting with multiple different types of disciplines and scientists, I think.
Thank you. We're running short on time, so I'm just going to ask Johan and then Samir to please very quickly pose your questions to the panel, and then very brief responses, and then we'll go to the wrap-up. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I was wondering what the panel's experiences with taking courses in explicitly philosophy of science has been, and what the use of that is for education programs. Because a lot of times when you talk about, for example, epistemological agility, I've taken courses with people from such disciplines that don't even know what ontology or epistemology is, because you don't explicitly talk about that a lot of times. And how do you balance that with more focused methods courses and yeah.
Thank you. And maybe Samir, can you ask your question right away as well? Thanks.
So my question is, we talk about expectations of students and advisees, and you've been postdocs a lot, and I wanted to flip that. And what do you think that expectations of you are as a supervisor, as a mentor, kind of more in a holistic perspective?
Okay, I'll just answer his question really quickly, which is, it's the hidden superpower. If you know ontology and epistemology and they don't, you've got one up on them, which is often very comfortable when you're working with positivist scientists. Because actually you can see where they're coming from and you can see where the weaknesses are, but because positivist scientists are not trained in epistemology and ontology. In the social sciences, the positivist social scientists aren't either. They used to be, but they're not. But if you develop some sophistication there, and go right back to the classics, and Popper certainly talks about it, and it gives you, a leg up in discussions, which I think is a key interdisciplinary skill. Like if you want to work across disciplines, you need to be able to do that. So I'll turn it over to others for Sammy's question for that.
I'd like to say something on that too, because my perspective is a little bit different. I'm actually not super keen on courses of philosophy of science, nor courses on methods, frankly. I much prefer if people explore these kinds of issues through their actual work on interdisciplinary topics, so as part of the research. So I find a lot of PhD coursework that I've seen, and not just at the university where I am at the moment, is not very useful. in the sense that I think once you actually grapple with these things in your real research projects and you really have to deal with those kinds of issues on a real case that is relevant to you, that is relevant to your thesis and your papers and so on, I think it becomes much more real. So I find that I would not want to overemphasize the importance of taking the right courses or designing the right courses. I would say like learn by doing. So that's where you really develop methodological and also I think sort of conceptual skills.
Well, just for students, I mean, in general, the skill to give them would be research design skills, ideas about how to integrate theory into your work, and some methods. And just like any proposal you write, that may or may not be what you actually do in the end, but I think just to work through some of the, you know, to work through some examples of how you would do it is what you need to do.
Yes, I would say that sustainability science is not at odds with science. Basically, it's another step forward in the integration of science. So I would say, yes, be undisciplined with a purpose.
So I'm afraid I have to bring this really interesting panel discussion to an end, and we would like to thank you for... So I would like to keep it very brief and basically just wrap up this session with some thoughts and wishes. So we hope really that this session is a starting point for an evolving discussion on those challenges and opportunities we as new grad students and young scholars in sustainability science are facing. And we truly hope that this discussion and cross-generational dialogue that we initiated today will reach far beyond this session and also this conference, and that every one of you, no matter your background and no matter where you are in your research career, that you will take home with you some of those questions and reflections. And in relation to some aspects that we just presented, I would actually like to ask Marta and Steve, two grad students, to inform the grad students among us briefly about the session on Wednesday. Where are they?
Perfect.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, great session. And just a reminder for those of you, we're going to be holding a workshop tomorrow from 3:40 to 4:40, so that's the break between the afternoon and parallel sessions. We're going to be creating an open platform for folks to come together, graduate students and young scholars, to talk about where do we go from here. So this has been a really great platform to kind of start that discussion off and start thinking about some of these issues and ideas that we're grappling with. And so as we continue to move through the conference over the next half a day and tomorrow, be thinking about some of these ideas and what you want to bring to the table as we think about how we can come together to have future collaborations and to build on our strengths as we move forward in addressing some of the problems and contribute to the betterment of humanity, as was highlighted. Just a reminder, that's tomorrow from 3:40 to 4:40 in Antidome 1. So thanks so much.
Okay, so one more time, thank you everyone that made this session possible to happen, and we would like to leave you with an artistic interpretation of the dilemmas we face